Hello everybody, this is me Sam here for BUKKIT Gaming, and today I'm going to make a intermediate level plugin, basically following on from the previous tutorial of basic plugin. If you haven't seen that, I recommend watching that first before we tackle this video, as some of the stuff in this video I won't cover and you might get a bit confused of what is happening, but if you've seen the previous video you should be alright. In this tutorial we're going to make a basic economy plugin. It's going to create a directory, settings file, and like a data file to store all the accounts. So first of all I created my plugin, made the class package and imported the reference libraries, and I'm going to create a new class. You should all know how to do this, and I'm going to call it Money Bucket. This is the main class that I will run when loading the plugin up. So first of all, I want to make it extend the Java plugin. So I'll try and go slow this time, as I know before I may have been going too fast and copying a lot over. So first of all, we need to define this class. So plugin money bucket, just as before. We just need to define the basic parameters. In fact, I'll just copy that across because that you should already know that from the previous plugin. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of those errors. We need to import the Java plugin. Plugin loader, description file, files, servers. Basically, if you have these errors on the side, it normally tells you which one to import, which is quite useful. And now we need to add the onEnable method. This is run when the plugin is enabled. And we're also going to add the onDisable method as well. So that's our basic structure of it. Now, for this plugin we need to make a directory, and we do this by first of all defining a string which will hold the directory. So static string, and we're going to call it main directory, and we're going to call it money buckets, and this will create a directory in the root folder. If you want to put it in the plugins folder, you would put plugins and then money bucket, but we're just going to make it into the root folder because that's where I prefer to place my plugins. Now to create it, we type in new file main directory, dot make mkdir, and that will just create that directory. If you want to create multiple directories, you can put make dirs, so that creates multiple directories, and this will just basically create the money bucket directory if it exists. However, it won't create it, which is quite useful. As well as the directory, we also going to need to make a file to hold all the accounts. Now we can do this by static file, let's call it accounts, and it is a new file in the main directory, and we're going to call it users.accounts. You can call it whatever you like. It will always be open. You can always open it in Notepad or basic programs like that. It's just the way it's written, so you can call it dot anything that takes your fancy, just for the sample, and just using accounts because this is quite an accounting plugin. Now that's all very well good, we just done the thing, but we actually need to make it. So first of all, we're going to check to make sure that it doesn't exist. We do this by checking the method does exist, and if it doesn't exist, we're going to try and create the new file by doing the new file method, and that creates a new file. But we also need to check to make sure if it fails, then we can find out why it failed. So we're just going to add IO at section E, and then we're going to just make it print to the console if it creates an error, which it usually doesn't, but just in case they have permissions or protection or something, they can see where they've done it wrong. Okay, so I'm going to create a new file now, new class, and it's going to be called load settings. I could do this in the main class file, but I've decided to make it a new class file just for easiness and making it just easier to see and whatever. So first of all, we're going to define the two variables, which are starting balance, which is an integer, and the string which we want. So I call that code. That could be coins, gold, whatever you like. So we're going to create a new method in the load settings Java called load main, and this is just a basic function that will run when we call it. So we can call it now, which with if we get the right area, with load settings dot main load main, and this will just run this method on enable. Now, first of all, we're going to define our property file. I cannot type, and we're going to get the main directory from the previous class, which will be money bucket, and then we're going to add our own thing. So we're going to call it main config dot properties, and always enclose it with a semicolon. So that's our string for our properties file. So we want to create this, so we're going to do plugin properties. Now we haven't created this file yet, so it create an error, but I'm going to do that next. And we're going to create a new plugin properties file. And that'll just create it. So now we're going to create that class. Now it's had these errors because it's referring to a class that doesn't exist yet. So if we see that, it'll suggest that we create the class. So we just do it easy way and just do that. And this is effectively the functions for loading the settings file. It's going to have a lot of functions in, so I'm going to go over what each one does. So we just want it to extend properties, and of course we want to import the properties. We need to define some stuff. So for general tidiness reasons, we're going to create a serial version UID and just call it 0L. This just stops warnings, and generally just it's better to code. We're going to create a logger called log, and this will be the logger of Minecraft. Actually, we're not going to do that just yet. And we need to create a string, which is going to call file name. Right, so just to define it, we're just going to call the plugin properties method, and the file name will equal the file. So when this is created a new file, this string properties file will be the file name as shown here. So one of the first things we want to do is load the file. So public void load, and the file, which we're going to call file, will be a new file called file name. And if this file exists, then do the following. First of all, we want to, okay, what I'm going to say, normally I would put try this and try that and catch exceptions, but for the purpose of this tutorial and to save time, I'm not going to put that as in. How about that's a task for you to do. So you can create, I'll show you briefly how to do it on this one, and then I won't do it for the next one. So try, and this is what it will try. So we want to try and load the new the file. So we're going to use file input stream, and that's the file name. Of course it's case sensitive. Right, and we need to import file input stream. Now if it fails to do that and we catch the exception EX, I'm going to call it EX. Now we need to catch the exception, so we just need to import that, and this will be your code here. So to tell the server, so you can put like just print something to say that this has not been able to load, but for now we're just going to load it. No, we're not. We are actually going to put try, because yes. Okay, so now back onto load settings, we want to load this file. So properties load, and this will just load the file. Now we're going to add some things to the file which the user can change. So first of all is the starting balance and the credits, and the starting balance is of course an integer, but it's not going to be that big, and we're just going to define it as 1000 is what they start with. So this will call the function getInteger, which we haven't made yet, and it will just create starting balance equals 1000, and when the user changes this, the starting balance will change. And we're also going to make a get string, which also doesn't exist yet. I'm just going to call this currency, and we're going to say for now coins. And of course these are errors because we haven't created the method yet, and so we want to save it, which we also haven't created the method yet, and we want to just call it money bucket main configuration, and this will just save the properties we've loaded before plus these ones to the file. So we now go back into plugin properties. We can actually make these methods. So first method we want to do is the save. So public void save. Now void means it doesn't give back anything. Public void boolean, public boolean will return a true or false. Public integer will return an integer, and so on for all the variables. So for save, because we called a string in this one, we want to get this string, so we just do string and we'll just call it the start string. And now this will work well if I spelt it right. Yeah, we'll check the spelling. That should work, no errors, because we created it, and it will send this string here, money bucket main configuration, to the public void save, and then it will take that and do whatever. So first of all we're going to try and store the data. So file output string, which will just output a file, and we're going to use the file we used before. We want the first line of it to be start. So yeah, we need to import file output stream, and I guess an error at start. Oh, of course, because we haven't bothered to do that. This is why, only problem with Eclipse, it likes to tell me I have errors before I finish writing, which is nice. It's like, let me finish my writing first. So we're just going to add the exception again. I'm just going to copy it because it's pretty much the same. And you can also import whatever code. So the same applies to get integer. So we're just going to just change this. Oops. Because this gives us two things, which is that first of all a string and then an integer. So we need to do string, and for this purpose we're going to call it just key, which is generally used, and then value for an integer. So first of all we're going to try and see if it contains an integer. So we want to return an integer, which is complaining because we haven't actually done it yet. So first of all we're going to check if the file contains the key, which is a starting balance, and if it does, then it will turn I cannot spell contains key. We want it to return the integer. I cannot spell for anything. Of the property. So the property of the key, if that makes any sense. Cannot spell. And I cannot type enough brackets. But if it doesn't do this, we just want to put it in. If it doesn't exist, basically. And we're just going to input the value if it doesn't exist. Basically, if they've deleted it for what reason, it will add the string back into the file of the default set value, which is 1000, which is this value here. But if this does happen, then we just return the starting value, which of course is the 1000 in this case. Now lastly for this is the public string, I think it was. Yeah, it was a string, always capital string, and we just want to get the string of basically what we had before, as at this time it's a string. A string is just it's just text as opposed to a number. So why have we got that over there? Of course you have to keep everything in the same class, not that class. There we are. It helps if you actually keep everything in the same class, believe it or not. So Now that's the get string. What we want to do, same as before, if it contains the key, which is key, there we want to return. This time we don't need all this, we're just going to do get property of key, which is nice and simple. And then we're just going to do value. Right. Yeah, it should be fine. Of course, it's values. We need to change it to value. See, it's always something simple like that that can throw you off. Just you need to check your code like that. Make sure it always has. It's always case sensitive. Spelling mistakes. It's something that's always silly like that that can just throw all your code out. And I do it all the time. I always forget curly brackets or normal brackets and just simple stuff. I'm just like, I spend hours trying to fix, and it's just something simple all the time. Occasionally just getting someone's eyes to look at it. They can always pick out stuff easier than the person making it. So of course this will apply to get boolean as well as and get integers, get doubles, and so on. I'll provide that in the source code. But for now we just need to get string and get integer functions. So now we've loaded up our settings and we've got these variables, starting, balance and credit. We need to add our listeners. So we won't need the block listener for this, we just need the player listener. So private final money bucket player listener is a player listener. If I can spell at all. And it's a new player listener called player listener. So many player listeners. And we're going to create that. And it's going to complain because we haven't made the file yet. Menu listener. Oh, that's just making a load of rubbish up. So we want to create a new class and call it MB player listener. And this is where we're going to write our player listener code. So first of all we need to extend the player listener class, and therefore because we've done that we need to add MB player listener money cannot type bucket instance and plugin equals this instance. Nice simple bit of code there. And of course we need to import the player listener and plugin. Oh, of course we need to define it as a plugin first. Well, as a variable. Public static, and there we are. There it is. And this is a bit, I've made it a bit messy. What I can do is do source format, and I'll just tidy it up a bit nicer. You can do that with all of them. Source format. Sometimes it might get a bit annoying. The way it formats it may not be to your preferences, but I believe you can change it. But I generally use it from now and again just to tidy it all up and make sure everything's in like nice indentations. So now that that's defined, we are going to create our plugin manager. So plugin manager, which we're going to call PM, equals get server get plugin manager. That just saves us typing it out every time. And of course we need to import it. So we need to register 2 events for this. and the first one is the player command. Player underscore command, and this is where it will go to. So this the player listener, the priority of the event. So priority is normal, and argument free this, and of course end it with a semicolon. And we just need to import the events. I'll just do it off by heart. Import org buckets dot event with a capital. There we are. Look at that. How's that? And we got this error because we haven't created the field. What? And because I put play listener instead of player listener. See, always check your things. Now we need to just add the same exact one except for player login, and then we're just gonna output the fact that it started. I'm just going to copy this across because you should know this from the previous tutorial. And of course we need to import what? Of course we need to get it first, which will be plugin description file PDF file equals get description. And voila, and so therefore on the table we can also add it. And voila. Now it's all well and good, but it doesn't actually do anything at the current moment in time. So we need to add our player login and player command. So first of all, we need to, every time that a user logs in, we need to add their name to the accounts list and give them the starting balance of 1,000. So on player login event, we're going to announce the variable player, which is a player, which is get player of the doer of the event, which is login, and the integer starting value will equals the load settings starting balance, which we have already defined in the load settings class, which we've already done before, which will get the balance which the user has defined, or the admin, and we just need to import those things there. That's the most easiest way of importing, just always checking the sides. Now we're going to create a new class file called accounting, and this will just basically do all our workings out for us when working with player balances. I like to call it accounting because it's a pretty funky name. So we're going to check if the boolean has account. So first we're going to check if they have account. So we're going to access the accounting file to see if they have the player, and the file name is accounts, which we have defined on the main class. And it's accounting, not accounts. And of course we haven't created that method yet, so we need to create that method, which which is contains key. So first of all, let's start this thing. Create a public static boolean, of which is called contains key, and we're going to get the player, which we're going to call P, and the file, which we're going to call file. Now the reason I've done file is because if we have a variety of files, we can define which file to edit when we call the I spelled it wrong. Contain. When we call the method, I cannot spell. And because it hasn't returned anything, it comes up with an error. So, as before, we're going to create new properties. So properties, we're going to call it just pro. Is new properties. And of course we need to import this. To import everything. And we're just going to convert the player to a string using p.getName function. So first of all, we're going to test to see if they're in the file, and we're going to just basically return true or false depending on if they're added to the thing. So first of all, try and do this. So file input stream, which we're going to call in, is a new file input stream, which is the file, which we have defined from the method, and we're going to load this. And we just need to add, import all the file input streams, and basically if the properties file, which is file input stream, contains the key player, which is the string player, then we can return that it does have the player, and we can return true. Right, so else, I'm going to catch it with an exception. And we're just going to return, if this happens, we're just going to return false. And of course we need to import IO exception. So basically that'll just check if the player is contained. So now we've got the boolean of if the player exists or not. So if they do exist, it's all good. However, if they don't exist, so if has account equals false, then we are going to create their account. So accounting is going to write their account, which will be player with their starting value, and the file named moneybucket.accounts. And of course this method isn't defined yet, so we need to define it on accounting. So we're going to go to accounting class and type in public static void, because it doesn't return anything, and we're going to call it right, which we've defined for, and we get the player, we're going to call it P, the integer, we're just going to call it starting balance, and the file. So this will happen whenever that's called. So first of all, we want to create, as before, a new properties file called, let's call it pro, just for easiness, and we want to get the string. Basically we want to convert the integer to a string. So new integer which is starting B, which we got from before, and then I'm going to convert this to string. Down mouse, and we're also going to convert the player name to string as we did before. Now we're going to try and copy it from this, because it's the same as before, except we want to, instead of checking, we want to set the property. So pro.set property. Let's set the property where player at starting value. That will just add like just the player equals and then how much they have, and of course we want to store this. Output tree, which is, we're going to just output the same file, and there are no comments, so we will output null. And of course, if this doesn't happen, then we catch the exception, and then you can put whatever you like to happen there. And of course, semicolon. So now, what happens when a player joins a server? It will check to see if they have an account. If they don't have an account, it will give them an account. Maybe you could add, I don't know, player, send message, welcome to the server, account has been made. That's up to you, but I won't do that in this plugin because time. So now for the main chunk of it. So this will be the player on command. So public void, because it doesn't return anything, on player command, which is, as we've defined before, happens every time a player types the command. Do this, and of course we have to import player chat. So first of all, we just want to get stuff from what they said. So we're gonna split whatever they've said into chunks. So we're gonna get the message, which is a string, and we're just gonna split it where there's a space, and this will just oops, what have I done there? Oh, I forgot to put an equal sign. So that'll just make an array of strings from the previous string which the user typed in at every space. So we also want to get the player as well. Get player. So first of all, we want to check to see if the person typed in money. Now if they typed in money, it will return how much they've got. So if split 0, because this is the first bit of the string, it starts at 0 because it's Java. And if it equals to money, we're going to ignore the case so they can type in slapdash, then do this, equals a null case, then do the following. So first of all, we're going to check to see if they have an account. So if they have an account, if they do have an account, if they don't have an account, sorry, then we're going to make them an account right here. Copy and pasting, and this starting value, because we haven't defined it before, we can just yoink it straight from loading settings, load settings, damn it, I cannot type. However, else if the split length, this will come apparent in a while, equals 1, so that if they've only typed money, nothing else on the end, then do this, and we want to get the balance, so we're going to call it balance equals accounting. We haven't created this method yet, and we're going to call it get balance player and the file name. So that's the method we haven't called yet, and we're just going to send them their current balance, which will just be. So we're going to call a chat color green just to make it look cool, and we're going to put money, and then we're going to put how much they have, and then we want to get the credit of what they're using, so like coins, gold, whatever. So we add that to the end. We need to import chat colors. So now we need to create the get balance on accounting. So public static integer, because we return an integer. I'm going to get the balance, and we get player p file. Let's come up an error because we haven't returned anything yet. We're going to do exactly the same as what we did before, and get the new properties file. Yeah, but this time we're not saving anything. We just want to get, so string. We're just going to call it string for now. We're going to get the property of the player string, and we're going to call this a string. Get property. Oh, forget property. Always something silly. Now we want to make the string convert it into an integer called balance. So integer, and parse the integer, which is string, and then we want to return this. And if not, we're just going to return nothing, so they have no money if it all just fails. So now when the user types in money, it will return how much money they've got. I mean, that's all well and good knowing how much money you've got, but it's pretty pointless when you can't trade with other players. So for the purpose of the tutorial, I'm going to just do /money, and then pay, player's name, and then amount. And if anyone's counting, that's four length of strings. So first of all, we're just going to check if the length of the array is greater or equal to 4. If it's greater than 4, we'll just discount it. We never use it. But effectively, if it's greater than 4, then it will do this. If it's, say we didn't put this in, and we're trying to check a string, say 2, and the user typed it in, it will come up with an error. So it's always good to check the length of the string array before actually doing commands with it. So first of all, we're going to check to see if they've typed in money. So split 0, we can just copy from here, and we want to also check to see if the second thing they've typed in, split 1, is pay. And if all that's just hunky-dory, then do the following. Down Eclipse. First of all, we want to, because the third bit of the array is the player name that the person is sending to, we want to get this player name. So string to player is the split of the third bit, which will be 2. And now we just want to check if we have an account. So if has account, because we can't do it if we don't have an account, equals true. We don't necessarily have to put equals true, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And then we're just going to put else here. We're going to just send him a message saying you need an account to have money. In the colour of red. Red is bad. So if their account is true, that means they have an account, which is all good. We want to get their balance. So, pardon me. We want to get their balance, so that's quite simple. We just copy it from there. Int balance. And we also want to get how much they're sending, so int, we're going to call it amount, is the integer of split 3 is the last thing they type in. They'll just make that an integer of how much they want to send to the player. So we've got our variables here. The last thing we're going to do is just, we need to get a list of all the players on the server, just so we can check that the player exists. So if the person they're sending to is not on the server, it can't obviously send it to them. So we need to just check to see if they exist, and of course it's split 2. So, what has it done? We need to import list. Oops. No, we need to import. Oh, damn you, Eclipse. Oh my god. Oh my god, you are such an annoying thing. But we need to import the utility list. And there we are. Now it's complaining because we haven't done anything yet with it. So I'm going to check to see if this list of players is 1. Because if it's 1, if it's nothing, then there are no players on the server with that name. And then do this. Else if the players do not equal 1, so that's why it's play as, because we've already used player. So if players, the size of the list of players is not equal to 1, do that. About errors. Players dot size. Make sure we type in the right brackets. Else, do this, and this will be our proper code. So first of all, if there are no players, we want to tell the player that there are no matching players. and if there are more than one matching player, we need to tell the player to be more specific. So we're going to name the player the receiver. So there will only be one instance of player on the list, and so therefore we can define their name and get their role properties. Now I always have players, I'm going to call them receiver, and I'm going to make sure they have an account as well, because if they don't have an account we can't send it to them. So 2 has account, which is exactly the same, except we're just using receiver instead of player, and 2 has account as a boolean. So if the person we send it to has an account and the balance we have is greater or equal to the amount we're sending, we can't send more than what we have, then do this, else we're going to shout at the player for trying to send too much. So we're just going to, this is the code where we are going to change the amount the players have. So first of all, the integer new balance of the player is the balance take away the amount they've sent. And I'm going to write that to the file instantly. So player and the amount is new balance, count type, and the file is money bucket.counts. Let's get it. I've been going for a while now. So we've updated that. Now we want to get how much the player, the receiver, has. So we can use 2 balance as the variable of how much they have, and so we want to create a new 2 balance, which will be how much they already have plus the amount, and then we want to write that to the file, of course being the receiver and new 2 player balance. Right, it's all good, it's all good. And now, I mean, there's no notification that that transaction has been successful, so we're going to do player dot send message chat color green because it's all good, plus amount of so it just tells the player how much they have sent. So it's just getting all the variables and putting them in a string. Two, and then we're going to add the 2 player. And we're going to copy this, and we want to send that to the receiver. The only difference is we want player, we want to get their name, or else it will show all the statistics of that player. Has sent you amount, I've sent you plus whatever the user defined That's credits. And that's all there is to it. We have finished the main structure, I believe. I think we have. Yes, we have. And in theory that should work. I'm gonna export the plugin into my desktop. Call it Money Bucket, and I'll join you in game. Alright, ta-ta. Right, back into the game. Now, if I type in money, then I get 1,000 coins. This is on my mate's server, and I can send him money by doing money, pay, Idanul, which is his name, and 10. And 10 coins is successfully transacted to, I don't know. And if he sends me coins, as you see, you sent me 1,000 coins. Now if I check my balance, I should have 1,919, because I sent him 10 and he sent me 1,000. This is a basic plugin, and that concludes it really. Don't forget to subscribe and like. And yeah, you can maybe add some admin functionality like money credit, money debit, possibly loans. Just play around with it, see what you get, and yeah, it's generally for a just a purpose tutorial. You can do what you like with it. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I've already said before. It's the same.